Dawn breaks over the Arctic seas. The pale sunlight shines on the ice floes. Here, a solitary, bar-tailed godwit soars above the Alaskan marshes. Thousands of kilometers await us. Each flap of his wings will propel him towards distant New Zealand. Far to the south, elephant seals glide silently beneath the ocean waves. They must navigate currents that span thousands of kilometers, between feeding areas and breeding beaches. In the Pacific, gray whales roll and jump from the Arctic feeding grounds to the lagoons of Baja California. Along the rivers of Japan, silver-scaled Japanese eels glide downstream. In open savannas, martial eagles hunt for prey as they fly. The desert sands shimmer as tarantula hawk wasps hunt with surgical precision. Along tropical coasts and rainforests, red crabs march in unbroken lines. From air to land and sea, these migrations define life itself. Every journey demands endurance, navigation, and instinct. This is the story of the most amazing migrations in the world. We started high in the north. Dawn breaks over the frozen marshes of Alaska's Arctic tundra. A pale light reflects off the frozen streams and the slippery, dark mud where small invertebrates move. Bar-tailed godwits, Limosa laponica, gather in compact flocks. Their long, slender beaks probe the ground with precision, extracting worms, crustaceans, and small mollusks. Their feathers ruffle in the cold wind. Each bird feeds urgently. Time is of the essence. The journey ahead will demand every last drop of energy stored in their massive pectoral muscles and thick layers of fat. The Arctic cold bites, but the needles are well prepared. Suddenly, a wave of movement ripples through the herd. The wings extend and reach a wingspan of more than 70 centimeters. The birds take flight in perfect synchronicity. The sky is tinged with bronze and chestnut plumage, and the V formation cuts through the frigid Arctic air like a living arrow. There are no thermals in the pale Arctic morning. The birds move subtly within the formation, adjusting their distance. They tilt their long, narrow wings to capture the slightest trace of lift. The slipstream helps minimize energy consumption. Those at the front absorb the greatest force of the wind, rotating periodically while others slide forward from behind. As the formation rises, the world below shrinks to a mosaic of ice pools, dwarf willows, and abandoned nests. The lead bird leans slightly, signaling a long, angled turn to the southwest. This is the first stage of a journey that will cross entire oceans. Their bodies are light but powerful, with hearts beating more than 10 times per second as they adapt to the constant, uninterrupted rhythm that will carry them for thousands of kilometers without stopping. As the hours pass, the curlews fly without pause. Storms loom over distant seas. Low clouds and sudden gusts test their resolve. The wings cut through the turbulent air, the feathers flex, the muscles curl and uncurl with rhythmic precision. Its small, sharp eyes scan ceaselessly, detecting changes in the wind, the glimmer of distant icebergs, and the faint glow of the coastline thousands of kilometers to the south. The Pacific Ocean stretches endlessly beneath them. There is no land to rest on. There is no entry to pause, only sky and sea. Even so, the flock maintains cohesion. Communication is silent, subtle. A storm front is rising on the horizon. The curlews tilt slightly, cutting through the currents, adjusting their altitude, their wings trembling in the force of the wind. Instinct guides them. Navigation is a combination of the Earth's magnetic fields, celestial signals, and accurate memory. Night falls over the open ocean. The curlews continue their flight, their wings cutting through the darkness, their muscles burning fat reserves to keep them moving. Sleep is minimal, lasting only a few seconds, interspersed with brief rests in the air. The young follow their instincts. The adults take the lead. They make sure that the younger birds maintain the formation. Weeks go by. The birds travel thousands of kilometers without touching land. Clouds gather, rain pours down, and the wind whips relentlessly. Some falter, exhausted or weakened, falling into the ocean or becoming prey to birds of prey on their rare stopovers. Yet most persevere. Finally, a glimmer of land appears in the distance. New Zealand's temperate wetlands emerge on the horizon, a mosaic of estuaries, lagoons and marshes. Weary but resolute, the curlews descend, their wings trembling after thousands of kilometers of tireless flight. The first touch of wet mud under their feet is a relief. Their beaks probe the ground once more, extracting the rich invertebrates that will replenish their lost energy. They preen themselves, their feathers damp and ruffled, their wings folding delicately against their bodies. Exhaustion is absolute, but their arrival heralds the next stage of life. Breeding. The males perform displays, spreading their wings and calling across the wetlands to assert their territories. The females respond with subtle movements and calls, assessing potential mates. When a mate is found, they carefully deposit their eggs in shallow furrows. It is pressed into patches of grass or raised mud, perfectly camouflaged against the mottled landscape. But danger is never far away. Gulls patrol the coast, flying low, while skuas approach from the tundra. At the first shadow, the male curlew rises in a display of feathers, squawking loudly and beating his wings directly at the intruder. In this way, some attacks are thwarted. Decoy flights lure predators away from the nest. The feigned displays of injury give the female a moment to lie flat on the ground, invisible among the stones. But nature is relentless. On days of scarcity, a skua dives too fast, too accurately. A brief flapping of wings and cries ends with a stolen egg. Take turns incubating. They circle carefully, lowering their warm bodies onto the eggs while constantly searching for movement. A fox zigzagging through the reeds, an Arctic hare too close, or a crow hovering nearby. The curlew godwits remain hyper-aware. Even the faintest sound of distant footsteps puts them on alert. Newly hatched chicks emerge as tiny mottled creatures, dry in seconds, and are already able to run. They follow their parents through the reeds, instinctively pecking at insects and tender vegetation. When a chick suddenly freezes, its parents react first, wings outstretched, high-pitched voices, scaring away smaller predators, luring them into a chase they can't win. However, some dangers do creep in. A swift attack from a hunter, a snake slithering through the grass, an ambush that not even the most vigilant needles can foresee. Within weeks, the chicks grow stronger, their feathers align to improve aerodynamics, and their legs lengthen. They must be ready for the return trip just a few months after birth. For the young, the first migration south is a crucible. No parent guides them. Instead, instinct leads the way. They learn to interpret the geometry of the sky, aligning themselves with the angle of the stars on cool nights, following the magnetic fields that draw their senses southward. Some falter, veering into storms or losing altitude in the open sea. Predators attack when they are exhausted, peregrine falcons on the cliffs, larger gulls in their resting areas, even opportunistic owls at night. However, many succeed, adjusting their course with each passing hour, learning the subtle variations of the wind and clouds. For the species, persistence ensures genetic continuity. When the flock settles once again in the Arctic tundra, its journey is over. However, kilometers to the south, another journey has begun. The subantarctic sun rises slowly over a desolate, windswept beach, shining on the wet sand and the icy tide pools. Enormous shapes stir in the mist that precedes dawn. Female elephant seals laboriously rise from the shore, their silvery brown skin gleaming in the salt water. Their flippers drag across the sand, leaving deep furrows as they settle into crowded harems. Around them, the males, immense and imposing, let out hoarse and resonant roars. Their necks are swollen with blood and adrenaline as they patrol territories and assert their dominance. The beach vibrates with the gentle hum of life, accentuated by the occasional slap of a fin or the crash of a wave against a rock. In these first hours, social hierarchies are established and maintained. A dominant male raises his enormous head, teeth bared and eyes gleaming, letting out a roar that echoes throughout the colony. Subordinate males hide at the edges, wary of the confrontation. The females respond with soft, nasal calls. They organize themselves around the strongest males. The newborn pups squeal and crawl among the adults, searching for milk, their tiny flippers frantically splashing in the sand. Nursing is a constant demand. Each female must feed her young and prepare her body for the return to the sea. When the tide recedes and daylight spreads throughout the colony, the female's attention shifts. One by one, they slide towards the waves. Slender bodies move with surprising grace. Beneath the waves, a microcosm of survival unfolds. Elephant seals swim tirelessly for days, diving hundreds of meters into near-freezing waters in search of squid, fish, and crustaceans. Her eyes adapt to the faint blue depths. The pupils dilate to catch any glimmer of prey. The muscles contract with slow, efficient pulses, conserving oxygen while the enormous lungs store air, allowing dives that can last over 20 minutes. Each ascent is deliberate, breaking the surface just long enough to exhale and inhale. The whiskered snouts of the seals gleam as they explore the endless horizon. Social communication persists even at sea. Deep, low-frequency vocalizations echo through the water, a sonar-like dialogue that maintains cohesion and defines spatial boundaries. Females can travel hundreds of kilometers, following ocean currents to reach rich feeding grounds. Although less frequently seen at sea, bulls travel through these waters to regain strength. The weeks pass over the ocean. Beneath them, the water column stretches out like a shifting labyrinth, layered with currents, bands of temperature, and drifting life. They descend hundreds of meters, their lungs compressing and blood being diverted to their vital organs as they vanish into the unknown. They can do it for minutes, sometimes more than an hour. But predators patrol these same depths. Great white sharks prowl the edges of continental shelves. A fin cuts across the surface kilometers away, catching the light before disappearing again. The shark's senses attuned to the faint electric fields and turbulent wakes that betray a seal's path. Seals, however, are not helpless vagrants. Their immense size, refined agility, and coordinated diving patterns reduce their vulnerability. Older males memorize danger zones and adjust their routes with subtle changes in depth. Females move along thermoclines where sound disperses, making ambushes difficult. When danger approaches, the seal's heart rate drops even further. The muscles stiffen in preparation. A single movement of the hind fins sends it spiraling sideways. This often disrupts the shark's timing. When it goes out to hunt, the seal glides forward, its whiskers vibrating with hydrodynamic signals, detecting the slightest disturbances in the water from a swimming squid. Here, the light of the moon or stars barely penetrates. However, the seal's enormous eyes capture every available photon. A tiny pulse of movement is registered. There, a squid darts forward unconscious. The seal's body tenses and fires in a brief burst of speed, opening its jaws just enough. A flick of the flipper, a micro-adjustment in the angle, and the seal catches its prey. The capture is clean. A brief snap. The squid's tentacles writhe as the seal pushes it deeper into its mouth with its tongue before swallowing it whole. Each catch fuels the next leg of the long, winding journey across the Pacific. They finally reach the breeding beaches. Here, time is crucial. The males arrive first, conquering territories with their powerful voices and enormous size. Rival males clash in spectacular displays of strength, their massive bodies colliding, resonating with thunderous roars, and sand erupting in the aftermath. These competitions determine the harem, the right to mate with dozens of females gathered along the shore. The females return soon after, carrying the weight of months at sea. The pups are born in rapid succession, tiny wriggling bundles, helpless but instinctively aware. The mothers nurse with rich fatty milk and the pups grow at an astonishing rate. The beach becomes a theater of life. Fights between puppies, displays of dominance among males, the soft calls of the females to coordinate with their young. Meanwhile, predators lurk in the distance. Along the surf line, great white sharks swim just beyond the breakers. On land, opportunistic gulls and crows circle, searching for unsuspecting pups, while inland foxes and coyotes explore the colony's boundaries, looking for weak points. Every change of tide, every splash on the coast carries a risk. However, the colony responds with collective vigilance. Dominant males issue warnings, females position themselves between the young and the scavengers, and the constant movement of bodies creates a living barrier against intruders. The ocean waits. After weeks in the breeding areas, the females and young leave. Now they must return to their feeding grounds thousands of kilometers away. The young learn the currents, interpreting the water's signals and following instinctive routes they have traveled for generations. The journey demands endurance and navigational skill. Seals swim with an economy of measured movements. They drift with thermal currents whenever possible, adjusting their depth to optimize oxygen use and feeding efficiency. Throughout this odyssey, environmental hazards test their survival. Storms whip up waves, icebergs drift unpredictably, and prey populations fluctuate. The bodies of seals respond with physiological adaptations. Bradycardia slows the heart rate during dives, diverting blood to critical organs, and large oxygen reserves in the muscles allow for prolonged dives. Their precise navigation guides them across vast expanses, using celestial signs, ocean currents, and geomagnetic signals to orient themselves. Males also return to the sea after the breeding season. They swim great distances to regain body mass and physical condition. Every kilogram of fat and muscle is important for the next season's breeding competitions and for surviving the harsh subantarctic winters. Energy intake is balanced with exertion. Hunting adapts to the availability of prey. Diving patterns are adjusted to the depth and density of the squid schools. Social interactions are minimized to conserve strength. Months go by and the cycle repeats itself. The females return to rest before the next breeding season. The males return to compete in harems. The pups grow and depart on their first migrations to feed. Stamina, timing, and coordination are crucial for all seals, from newborn pups to dominant males. At this moment, nightfall settles over the breeding beaches. The roars echo in the arena. The fins scrape against wet surfaces. The last females glide towards the waves. The ocean swells. The seals move as if they were a living tide. Meanwhile, far to the north, another remarkable odyssey is unfolding. The Arctic sun barely rises above the horizon. It casts a pale light on icy waters strewn with drifting ice. Grey whales, Eschrichtius robustus, glide across the icy expanse, their massive bodies cutting through the surface with natural grace. Their mottled grey skin glistens with droplets, and barnacles cling like tiny sentinels to their flanks. Below, the seabed is teeming with crustaceans, amphipods, and small benthic creatures. With slow, deliberate lunges, whales submerge their heads, collecting sediment and prey in their cavernous mouths, filtering the food through their baleen plates. Each bite is precise, a calculated effort to extract the maximum sustenance while conserving energy. Migratory herds move with fluid coordination. Low-frequency calls echo through the frigid waters, vibrations that travel between whales across vast distances. Calves emerge, rolling and leaping, practicing jumps that will give them the strength they need for months of travel. The spy jump allows one to glimpse distant icebergs and predatory orcas. The mothers surround their calves, guiding, protecting, and teaching them. The whales feed continuously, building up energy reserves in preparation for the monumental journey south. Their muscles swell, their blubber thickens, serving as both insulation and fuel. Time is everything. The departure cannot be too early, so as not to miss optimal feeding opportunities, nor too late, as this will close the narrow berthing window in the Baja California lagoons. Once the decision is made, the herd begins its epic migration. The journey south is between 8,000 and 11,000 kilometers one way. They must follow the contour of the North American coast. They take advantage of the currents, navigate the eddies, and instinctively understand the winds and tides. Whales leap and dive in rhythmic patterns, conserving energy while communicating through song-like pulses that travel for miles. Calves learn quickly by imitating the adults. The predators follow the journey. Orcas patrol known migration routes, watching over weak or isolated calves. Grey whales mitigate risk through pod cohesion, coordinated movement, and keen vigilance. A slight change in direction or surfacing pattern is enough to avoid a lurking predator. Energy conservation remains fundamental. Prolonged dives are followed by brief surface excursions to maximize oxygen use and minimize resistance. As the days turn into weeks, the water warms. Kelp beds and shallow coastal areas offer brief opportunities to forage, although feeding is secondary to migration. The calves gain experience navigating the currents. The pod adjusts its speed and formation according to the weather, food availability, and the physical condition of the younger members. Upon reaching Baja California, the pod enters protected lagoons, calm and warm waters beyond the relentless expanse of the open ocean. The mothers prepare for childbirth. The young born here will be better protected from predators and will benefit from calmer waters. Courtship begins with the males displaying themselves with slow, undulating movements, tail flicks, and vocal sequences that echo across the lagoon. The females respond with subtle positioning. They select partners who have demonstrated navigation skills and endurance. The lagoons teem with activity. Young animals play, adults rest, and social bonds are strengthened. The young born in the lagoons are small but vigorous. The mothers nurse continuously, devoting their energy to rapid growth. Social learning begins early. The herds show coordinated movement even in shallow waters. After weeks of birthing and courtship, the herd prepares for the return journey. The adults and older pups begin their northward migration, traveling 8,000 to 11,000 kilometers to their Arctic feeding grounds. Every day involves careful energy management, deliberate search for food when opportunities arise, protecting the youngest whales. Currents are analyzed, weather is anticipated, and social cohesion is maintained. Lessons learned on the journey south are reflected in the efficiency and endurance of the northward voyage. Grey whales store energy for the months of fasting during reproduction and calving. Arctic and subarctic feeding grounds provide sustenance, but they also expose the whales to extreme conditions. In the lagoons of Baja California, the species balances reproduction with safety, raising the next generation while conserving energy for the return journey. Every whale, from the oldest matriarch to the newborn calf, contributes to the success of the pod. Adults teach, guide, and protect. The calves observe, imitate, and gradually gain independence. As the Arctic sun rises once more over the feeding grounds, the herds return from their epic journey. The young have grown, the mothers have regained their strength, and the cycle begins again. Each migration reconnects ocean ecosystems, redistributes nutrients, and reinforces the species' extraordinary adaptation to a life defined by movement, from frozen feeding grounds to sun-warmed lagoons, from predator avoidance to raising calves. The journey of the grey whale is nothing short of extraordinary. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean sparkles in the morning sun. The waves crash against the rocky shores where the ocean meets the mouths of rivers. Here the Chinook salmon, Oncorhynchus chawitcha, gather. Their silvery bodies reflect rays of light as they sense the call of their native rivers. Ocean life fades behind them. The vast expanse of water teems with plankton, small fish, and predators. Further along lies fresh water, a labyrinth of rapids, waterfalls, and lurking threats. Instinct drives them forward. The salmon leap into the river, the water churns and foams, a white eddy against which the fish must fight. Scales gleam like armor in the morning light. Each fin stroke is a battle against the relentless force of gravity and the water. Bears, eagles, and otters wait patiently on the banks, piercing eyes, claws and claws ready. However, the salmon's strength and stamina give it a fighting chance. They leap, clearing waterfalls in arcing flights, snout first, tail propelling their bodies with explosive energy. Each leap consumes precious energy. Exhaustion or miscalculation means being captured or swept back into calmer waters. Several tributaries branch off along the main canal, each one a labyrinth of obstacles. The salmon navigates by instinct. Its sense of smell guides it home. Every eddy and bend feels familiar, coded deep within its brain. Muscles burn, heart pounds, gills expand with oxygen intake, each beat synchronized with the rhythm of the river. They make their way through narrow channels, crashing into rocks and shallow drops, scarred bodies against abrasive surfaces. The journey is agonizing but relentless. The urge to procreate overcomes pain, fatigue, and threat. Eagles swoop down silently, snatching fish mid-leap, while bears plunge into turbulent waters, attacking struggling salmon with their claws. As Chinooks swim upriver, it becomes a sea of predators lurking around every bend. Along the fallen logs, river otters glide in and out of the eddies. They intercept smaller salmon with lightning-fast bites. In deeper pools, seals and sea lions swim upriver from the estuary, appearing unexpectedly in the choppy current, their jaws snapping shut around fish weakened by miles of exertion. Even wolves patrol the gravel banks. They observe the moment a salmon washes ashore, exhausted, seizing the opportunity with precision. However, the migration continues. Each predator tests the fish in different ways. Aerial attacks, ambushes on the shore, and underwater pursuit. The Chinook's bodies are battered, they are missing scales, their fins are broken, but they still keep moving forward. The river narrows, the currents are strengthening. Predators swarm the margins. Only the most agile, strong and resilient fish reach the upper reaches of the river. By then their bodies have changed. The jaws are now locked. The coloring has darkened. All of this indicates that the fish is ready to spawn. The energy is running out. However, a final burst of vitality pushes them towards shallow spawning grounds. Here, the males compete fiercely for access to the females. They butt heads, butt bodies, and flap their wings. Dominant males protect their harems, pushing rivals downstream or into shallow water. The females dig nests or depressions in the gravel where the eggs will rest. Spawning is a chaotic and violent ballet. The males approach, crowding together, releasing milk onto the eggs in unison. Some fail, displaced by stronger rivals, others succeed. Once spawning is complete, their energy reserves depleted, most of the Chinooks perish. Their bodies serve as sustenance for bears, eagles, and scavengers. The once barren gravel beds now teem with microscopic life. Nutrients from the decomposing bodies of adults leach into the cool current, fueling algal blooms that in turn nourish swarms of aquatic invertebrates. Mayfly nymphs cling to the stones, caddisfly larvae drift in silken capsules. Small crustaceans move through the shallow waters in a living mist. In this nutrient-rich nursery, juvenile Chinook salmon emerge, no bigger than a human finger, with translucent bodies. Instinct guides them as they surface from the gravel, taking their first breaths and orienting themselves toward the current. They begin feeding immediately, biting at drifting insects, grazing microcrustaceans, learning to move among the rocks to avoid predators. Each day is a lesson and a challenge. Trout stalk in deeper pools, dippers hunt in the rapids, and mink patrol the banks. Yet the strongest juveniles adapt quickly, fattening up during the spring and preparing for the next major transition. As the months go by, the fry transform into mullet. Their bodies change from a mottled freshwater camouflage to a bright silver. This is a sign of preparation for the journey downstream. They time their descent with the spring thaw and floods, letting the swollen river carry them through rapids, past log jams, and into ever-widening channels where herons attack stragglers and kingfishers dive with astonishing accuracy. Many will not survive the challenge. New dangers are emerging in the estuary. Harbor seals circle like shadows beneath the surface, gulls screech overhead, and the changing salinity tests the ever-evolving physiology of their bodies. Those that adapt quickly glide out to sea, disappearing into the cold, rich waters of the Pacific. Their years at sea make them giants. Chinook salmon grow faster and are larger than most of their relatives, feeding on herring, squid, and krill in upwelling zones where nutrient-rich currents rise to the surface. From here, they migrate thousands of kilometers along continental shelves. They navigate thanks to faint magnetic signatures imprinted on their bones since birth. Predators follow them in equal measure. Orcas cut through the schools with precise attacks, sea lions ambush from below, and sharks patrol the deep channels. Yet the survivors continue to grow, reaching lengths of over a meter and weights exceeding 20 kilograms. The muscles thicken, the scales harden. Upon reaching maturity after 3 to 5 years, the ancestral call to return stirs within them. Subtle changes in ocean temperature, magnetic signals, and chemical traces of their native river converge like a map only they can read. One by one, they head inside and gather on scattered benches. They follow the continental slope towards the river's mouth. Their bodies begin to transform again. The males develop hooked jaws and a vibrant red coloration. While the females become filled with thousands of eggs. Feeding ceases. Every remaining calorie goes towards upward momentum. They will return to the same gravel beds from which they once emerged, and there they will meet their end. A new generation will take their place. From the turbulent Pacific to the mighty rivers of North America, from shallow waters teeming with predators to gravel beds sculpted by spawning. The Chinook salmon's journey is truly epic, exhausting, and essential. Meanwhile, miles away, the ocean shimmers in the rising sun. It is a mosaic of turquoise and deep blue. A loggerhead sea turtle, caretta, glides just below the surface, its gleaming shell and flippers slicing through the water with graceful, measured movements. Jellyfish float lazily nearby, oblivious to the predator that watches the currents. With a sudden turn, the turtle closes its powerful jaw around a gelatinous prey. Swallow carefully. Her large amber eyes scan the surroundings. The ocean is vast, but magnetic fields and chemical signals guide every movement with unerring precision. The surfacing is brief. The lungs expand with a hiss before the turtle dives back down, its streamlined body and taut muscles beneath the hard shell. Months at sea are a cycle of feeding, resting, and sailing. Currents are used to conserve energy, and deep dives allow for efficient hunting. As they forage alone among reefs and seagrass beds, their silhouettes float amidst shifting columns of light, attracting the attention of predators. Tiger sharks approach from below. Their movements are almost imperceptible until the final attack. Adult loggerhead turtles counterattack with sudden bursts of speed. The powerful movements of their front fins and sharp turns force sharks to lose momentum. Their thick, armored carapace acts as a shield, allowing them to pivot laterally and reducing the likelihood of a clean bite. When hunting crustaceans and jellyfish, loggerhead turtles dive deeper. They glide into the faint blue-green silence where the silhouettes of sharks blur and turtles use the ocean floor as camouflage, crouching against the sand or hiding in scattered rocky outcrops until the danger passes. Dolphins, although not true predators of large turtles, test them out of curiosity. Their packs move like silver bows around the loggerhead turtle. At these moments, the turtle maintains its course, gliding slowly and steadily with a confident air, avoiding any sudden movements that might provoke harassment. Young loggerhead turtles face a harsher reality. Dorado, grouper, and larger fish stalk them in open waters. Only the most agile individuals reach the safety of the drifting sargassum mats, where they can hide among the tangled golden leaves. With the changing seasons and driven by instinct, the turtles swim toward their native beaches, thousands of kilometers away. The subtropical oceans disappear behind them as shallow coastal waters emerge. Sandy beaches appear in the distance. Each female remembers the beach where she was born decades ago. The waves crash against the shore, but the turtle presses on, dragging its enormous body across the sand. Each flipper digs furrows, anchoring it in preparation for the laborious act of laying its eggs. Nesting is laborious. Its body shudders with every movement. The tail and rear fins form a cavity in which dozens of eggs will rest. Vigilance is paramount. Predators are lurking. Crabs, raccoons, and even opportunistic birds are on the lookout for missteps. Once finished, the nest is carefully camouflaged with sand, concealing the future of the pups under layers of warmth and protection. The mother returns to the sea, bearing scars and memories of her long journey. Months later, the young emerge. Tiny, soft-shelled, and instinctive, they scurry toward the waves, stirring the sand with their flippers and leaving delicate trails. Moonlight reflects off their shells as they navigate, guided by subtle visual and magnetic cues toward the open ocean. Crabs bite the stragglers. The seagulls fly in circles looking for easy prey. However, most reach the water driven by evolutionary necessity. Now the currents guide them. The juveniles will spend years in pelagic zones, growing, feeding, avoiding predators, and gradually strengthening for future migrations. At sea, feeding is incessant. Throughout their ocean journey, loggerhead turtles follow nutrient-rich currents, sometimes following schools of fish and adjusting their depth to optimize feeding. Magnetic orientation guides them over thousands of kilometers. Their bodies respond to subtle geomagnetic signals, tides, and chemical gradients. Social interactions are brief. They avoid competition, seek mates, and negotiate territories. Energy conservation is crucial. One wrong move can cost them their survival in this vast, predator-filled environment. Over the years, these turtles undertake repeated migrations. Adults remember their native beaches. Juveniles gradually develop instinctive routes, reconstructing the vast geography of their ocean world through a mixture of magnetic imprinting, temperature gradients, and the faint chemical signatures carried by deep currents. As they grow up, their wandering paths begin to turn into trajectories with a purpose. These routes take them across continental shelves through warm gyres and finally to the feeding grounds that will sustain them into adulthood. Years pass in this drifting learning process. Each season adds layers of experience. Reproduction only occurs every few years. The rhythm synchronizes with environmental cues that maximize offspring survival. Rising surface water temperatures signal increased productivity, lunar phases illuminate optimal nights for nesting, and shifting currents deliver nutrient boosts that strengthen both males and females. When the time is right, the females return to the same beaches where they were first born. The males reach the open sea in dispersed groups, and courtship takes place in shallow water through gentle circling, caressing, and synchronized swimming. Each completed cycle ensures the next generation has the greatest chance of survival. Predation conditions each stage. On the beaches, eggs and hatchlings are threatened by crabs, raccoons, and seagulls. In the open ocean, sharks silently patrol, waiting for any miscalculation. Even humans with nets, pollution, and habitat disturbance introduce invisible dangers. However, loggerhead turtles persist. When they reach adulthood, loggerhead turtles are expert navigators. Their fins propel them thousands of kilometers. Their senses are attuned to subtle magnetic signals. Their eyes search for predators and prey. Nesting females make precise and energy-intensive excursions to the beach. The juveniles grow up in the open sea. As the sun sets over the horizon, a solitary adult glides through calm waters. Meanwhile, the waters off the European coast shimmer with a shifting light. Sunlight fractures as it undulates, casting mottled patterns onto the sand and stone below. A common cuttlefish, Sepia officinalis, glides across the seabed. Its fins undulate with a hypnotic rhythm. Its body shimmers with hues ranging from mottled browns to flashes of iridescent green and pale white, blending seamlessly with pebbles, algae, and detritus. Large, intelligent eyes scan the terrain for shrimp and crabs. Its delicate tentacles are poised for a precise strike. With a sudden jet of water, the cuttlefish launches itself, ensnaring an unsuspecting crab in its tentacles. Its beak pierces the crab's exoskeleton, and the prey is swiftly subdued. The muscles flex beneath a smooth, chameleon-like skin. Nearby, another cuttlefish mimics the pattern of the sunlit sand, approaching a small patch of seagrass. Its skin ripples with dynamic stripes and spots, a visual language understood only by its kind. During the hunt, cuttlefish are solitary yet hyper-aware. Small fish fly close, skimming the seabed while crabs remain frozen, sensing the predator's faint ripples in the water. The camouflage is both offensive and defensive. In seconds, a predator can disappear into the moving seabed. When summer arrives, the water temperature increases. This is the signal to head for shallow, sheltered spawning grounds. The small but agile cuttlefish move through sandy channels and rocky reefs, avoiding predatory fish and larger cephalopods. Males compete for territory and access to females. They use surprisingly elaborate displays. Arms are extended, skin pulsates with alternating patterns, and subtle postures convey dominance. Rival males approach cautiously, each assessing the other's display, fearful of a physical confrontation that could result in serious injury. Spawning begins in carefully chosen locations. It is usually found under overhangs among dense masses of algae or in crevices between rocks. The female lays clusters of eggs, each delicately attached to stones or algae. The males protect the females, rapidly changing color and displaying their arms to deter rivals. Some men employ stealthy tactics. They mimic the patterns of the females to evade the dominant males, fertilizing the eggs undetected. The eggs, protected in hidden crevices, incubate for weeks, absorbing the subtle warmth of the water and the nutrients brought in by the tides. Predation never stops. Larger fish, octopuses, and seabirds hunt in these waters, drifting among the faint coastal currents like toothy shadows. The cuttlefish detects them before they appear. Pressure waves brush against its sensitive skin. Faint electrical signatures resonate through the water. Instantly, its body transforms. The pigments in its skin spring into motion as thousands of chromatophores expand and contract, transforming the cuttlefish into a rock, a drifting piece of seaweed, or a ghostly smudge indistinguishable from the sand. When camouflage alone is not enough, a jet of ink is released. A dark cloud swirls, forming a perfect silhouette of its own body. As the predator lunges toward the lure, the cuttlefish recoils sharply using its jet propulsion, disappearing into the gloom as if swallowed by the sea. Even as he flees, the patterns on his skin ripple in controlled flashes of strobe stripes and dots. These signals aim to confuse both hunter and prey. These moving illusions create false edges and shifting shapes that break up the animal's silhouette, gaining valuable seconds. But energy management is everything. Every escape, every burst of speed, every flash of color drains the reserves. Thus, hunting is a measured art. The cuttlefish floats motionless, its arms held vertically like delicate flowers, calculating the perfect moment before attacking a crawling crab or shrimp. A failed attack wastes effort and risks being discovered. But one that is successful provides food. During migration and spawning season, cuttlefish demonstrate extraordinary intelligence. Their navigation relies on a combination of memory, environmental cues, and visual landmarks. They take advantage of currents and tides to conserve energy. Social interactions, subtle but very complex, determine the success of mating. Each cuttlefish plays a role in survival, balancing feeding, evading predators, and reproducing, all within a narrow seasonal period. The young hatch with astonishing speed. Tiny versions of the adults emerge from the oviducts. They already show the remarkable camouflage ability and skin patterns of their parents. Within hours, they begin hunting, searching for planktonic prey. Mortality is high. Only the most vigilant and agile survive to adulthood, those that do embark on the same migratory and reproductive cycles, linking generations across the shallow coastal waters of Europe. Cuttlefish begin by scanning the seabed. They adjust their coloration to match their surroundings, extending their tentacles with lightning speed and attacking before their prey can escape. The undulation of their skin, the subtle twitch of one eye, and the undulation of their fins all contribute to deceiving, hypnotizing, or capturing their prey. Even eating can be social. Males and females search for food in close proximity. Predator evasion is constant. Rapid dorsal ink blotting, sudden changes of direction, and instantaneous changes in camouflage allow the cuttlefish to survive in waters teeming with hungry fish, octopuses, and crustaceans. The skin can change from sandy tones to dazzling flashes of stripes or spots. The jets of water allow bursts of speed, while the complex skin patterns create confusion and hesitation in predators. Survival is a constant balancing act between aggression, caution, and perfect timing. At the end of the season, the shallow waters become calm. Adult cuttlefish retreat to deeper areas. The youth players are growing up. The seabed, littered with hidden eggs, is preparing to welcome the next generation. Currents carry offspring to new territories, thus ensuring genetic flow between populations. The cycle will repeat itself. Meanwhile, the forest floor on Christmas Island trembles with the movement. The rust-red shells gleam in the dappled sunlight. Millions of red crabs, Gecarcoidea natalis, emerge from their burrows. Leaves crunch under their claws. The damp earth crunches underfoot. The scent of the ocean drifts inland, carried by the humid air, heralding the start of the mass migration. Each crab pauses. The antennas move, detecting chemical signals and subtle vibrations from the forest floor. Then, as if on command, the swarm advances in a living, crimson tide that stretches as far as the eye can see. Claws grip roots and fallen trunks. Legs navigate steep slopes and narrow crevices. The forest is both a highway and an obstacle course. Young people stay close to adults. Learning paths, the pace of migration. Predators such as birds and monitor lizards watch eagerly, hunting the slow or distracted. But the sheer number of crabs provides overwhelming security. A single misstep is insignificant. The swarm advances relentlessly, undeterred. As the crabs approach the shore, the forest gives way to open sand. The waves lazily caress the shore, forming foam at the edges. The females pause, selecting the best spots to lay their eggs, digging burrows in the damp sand with powerful claws. The males protect them, attacking their rivals in short, violent fights to assert their dominance. Timing is key. On the other side of this spring tide, predators lurk. Thrushes wait in the branches, eels at the freshwater crossings, and crabs of rival species seek out their weak points. But the overwhelming number of migrants blurs individual vulnerability. Survival lies in the collective surge. As the crabs reach the coastal terraces, the roar of the ocean becomes more intense. The females gather on the shore, synchronizing their release with the lunar cycle. The waves pulse beneath them as they extend their abdomens and release thousands of eggs into the surf. The spawn bursts forth like a living cloud. The vibrating, spinning embryos are instantly caught by the rising tide. This synchronized explosion of life overwhelms the predators lurking offshore. Fish swoop in frenzied bursts, snatching the drifting eggs, while juvenile sharks and masses of filter-feeding invertebrates devour everything they can. However, the sea is flooded with such density that not even the hungriest hunters can consume it all. The eggs that escape into the open ocean begin their transformation. Weeks pass while the larvae float in shallow blue waters, tiny translucent bodies suspended in the currents like wandering stars. They feed on planktonic blooms near coral reefs. Brilliant bursts of copepods and phytoplankton fuel their growth, and each meal hardens their bodies and lengthens their legs. But the ocean is unforgiving. Jellyfish tentacles ripple through the water, capturing hundreds of larvae. Schools of small fish trace spiral patterns beneath the surface. They take over the small shapes. The vast majority disappear into the guts of predators, feeding the larger residents of the reef. However, enough survive to drive the lineage forward, molting in stages until the fragile larvae transform into miniature crabs. Now they are pigmented, armored, and hungry. When the rains return months later, these newly formed juveniles drift on coastal currents back to the island. They scatter across the shore in shimmering waves, instinctively climbing into the forest. The journey inland reflects the departure of his parents, but in reverse, from the sea to the forest. They climb through the grass and low vegetation to orient themselves, then descend to the humus-rich soil, where their roots sink deep into the earth for protection. Here they dig their first burrows, small round cavities that will expand with age and strength. Predation still follows their every move. Birds fly overhead, reptiles prowl the undergrowth, and larger crabs search for food without hesitation. But behaviors honed over generations guide them, teaching them caution, opportunity, and the importance of shelter. From the forest to the sea, from the sea to the forest, the cycle continues. Along the way, the crabs feed opportunistically, consuming leaves, fruit, and organic debris to maintain the stamina required for migration. Each generation repeats the ancient pattern, millions of individuals moving in unison, driven solely by instinct. Young people learn from adults, observing how to navigate through the roots, avoid holes, climbing steep slopes. Adults signal with their antennae, adjusting their rhythm and direction. Competitive interactions are brief but intense. The crabs vie for territory or mating rights. Predators shape every moment. The birds swoop down from branches, attacking unsuspecting crabs with their talons. The lizards dart across the open ground, seizing everything they can. However, migration is unstoppable. The density of crabs overcomes predation, a massive defense based on numbers and time. Egg-laying marks the culmination of the migration. Females burrow deep, pressing their undersides against the wet sand as they release thousands of eggs. The males remain vigilant, repelling their rivals with swift charges and strong pinches from their claws. The waves rise periodically, sweeping away some nests, but the synchronization ensures that many eggs are carried safely to the currents. Here, reproductive strategy faces environmental pressure. Simultaneous spawning maximizes the chances of survival. The larvae float in the ocean for weeks, propelled by the currents. They feed, grow, and evade predators, a daily struggle for survival. Once sufficiently developed, they return to the forest as juveniles. Their first journey inland is perilous. Obstacles abound, from rocks to fallen logs, while predators lurk. But instincts guide them, ingrained from past generations. They climb, dig, and dig burrows until they finally reach the forest floor. Those that don't make it are not wasted. The nutrients from the dead crabs nourish the forest floor. The young crabs watch the adults, perfecting their climbing technique and route selection. Adults modulate the rhythm, responding to environmental cues, rain, humidity, changes in lunar illumination. Communication is subtle. The antennas touch, gentle nudges, posture signals. Every action contributes to the rhythm of the migration, a perfectly orchestrated movement across uneven terrain. At night, the forest seems quiet, but the crabs are still on the move. Thousands of feet crawl through the leaf litter, and the soft clicks and scrapes are the only sound. Some stop in small burrows, resting while remaining alert. The antennae move smoothly, detecting predators or obstacles. When the adults return to the forest after spawning, the next generation grows up in juvenile burrows. As the months go by, these young crabs emerge. It feeds on leaves, detritus, and small invertebrates. In the end, they too will embark on the perilous journey to the sea, completing the cycle. Meanwhile, fog drifts over the banks of Japanese rivers at dawn. The silvery glimmers capture the first rays of the sun. Young Japanese eels, Anguilla japonica, crystalline and almost transparent in appearance, move in shallow waters, their small fins undulating with every movement. They navigate over rocks, fallen branches and reeds. Instinct guides them towards the open sea. Dawn breaks gently over the river. The juveniles gather on the banks of the stream, their bodies now faintly pigmented, mere shadows of the silvery sheen they will one day wear. They move with nervous precision, adjusting to the river's changing moods as they prepare for the next stage of their journey. A great blue heron flies above them. Without warning, it falls with terrifying precision. Water explodes around it. The young scatter, twisting in instant spirals, using their slender forms to glide through the reeds and under the stones. One is captured, caught in the heron's beak. But the others, sensing danger through pressure waves that travel across their skin, accelerate the process with renewed urgency. In the shallows, small fish dart swiftly among the elvers. Juvenile ayus shimmer in loose schools, and minnows twinkle like flashes of light. Young eels move among them, sharing the same river channel. The fish openly feed on drifting insects. Each young eel follows signs it has never been taught. Chemical trails woven into the water tell them where the fresh water begins to fade into the brackish tide. Magnetic whispers from Earth's magnetic field pull them downstream, pointing in the direction of the distant sea. They adjust the angle of their body, leaning and turning to take advantage of the microcurrents. When the riverbed shifts and silt muddies the water, they climb over slippery stones with serpentine grace, their skin glistening in the dim light. Instinct drives them to avoid the still pools where predators lurk and follow the faster-moving channels. There, escape is easier. As they approach the estuary, the river widens and deepens, permeating the air with the intense smell of salt. The youngsters perceive the change instantly, their bodies tense, their muscles tense. The transition from fresh water to brackish water is a threshold few will survive. Opportunistic predators gather here. The cormorants plunge into the water like spears, and larger fish lurk in the shadows of the seaweed and roots. When the cormorants dive, the eels leap out in unison, panicked, turning the water into a cloud of pale streaks. Some disappear among the submerged grasses, others bury themselves in the soft mud and remain motionless until the danger passes. But those who resist continue their journey toward the open ocean. Night falls when they finally feel the full weight of the tide. The river's push yields to the immense force of the Pacific. The stars shine in the sky, reflecting faintly on the waves. The juveniles stop near the river mouth, tasting the water and orienting themselves. Years of ocean crossings across the Philippine Sea await us. The juveniles, now elvers with their lustrous silvery appearance, feed opportunistically on plankton, invertebrates, and small fish. Days blend into nights as they travel on the oceanic conveyor belt, avoiding tuna, sharks, and other predators. Their fin pulses are measured, and their breathing is efficient. They take advantage of the waves and tides, and the eels let themselves be carried along when possible. What began as the cautious descent of a juvenile into the waves becomes, with time and growth, a bold and deliberate migration across the western North Pacific. The seasons change. The once translucent elvers darken into yellow eels. They feed themselves through years of coastal wandering. Later, they transform back into shimmering silver eels with streamlined bodies for greater endurance and dilated eyes for the deep, moonlit waters. Now fully grown, their muscles throb with unstoppable force. They can travel thousands of kilometers. Adults swim through a world of shifting currents. Walls of hot and cold water collide. The eddies swirl like liquid galaxies. Storms carve temporary canyons of turbulence, and enormous predators such as tuna, swordfish, and deep-sea sharks patrol the blue corridors that stretch out before them. Silver eels sense subtle salinity gradients and follow the faint pulse of temperature bands. They trace geomagnetic fields. When magnetic lines bend, the eels adjust their angle. When deep currents rise, they take advantage of them, conserving strength for the final ascent to the spawning layers far offshore. At night, the adults rise to the upper water column, their bodies glowing faintly in the reflected starlight. Here they feed on small crustaceans and drifting squid. By day, they dive back into cooler, darker waters where there are fewer predators. The journey ahead demands absolute endurance. As they approach the subtropical gyres west of the Mariana Trench, the water changes once again. Warmer, richer with the chemical signatures of ancestral spawning grounds, the eels accelerate, drawn by signals that no human instrument has fully deciphered. They gather in scattered groups, solitary for most of their lives, but now converge silently. Individuals that haven't seen each other since leaving their native river years ago. Their already aerodynamic bodies undergo final transformations. Enlarged eyes, thickened skin, and swollen gonads, all in preparation for the final act. Predators sense the movement too. Long-snout lancelets float in the depths, their jaws hinged like traps, and silky sharks track migrating eels. Some silver eels are captured in sudden flashes of teeth and turbulence, but many others persist. Finally, after a journey of years and thousands of kilometers, the adult eels reach the spawning grounds near the western Mariana Ridge. Here, in the deep, dark layers between 150 and 300 meters, the eels release their future into the currents. The eggs rise in slow spirals. They are fertilized in the floating darkness. They will soon become transparent leptocephalous larvae, transported by the Kuroshio back towards the shores of East Asia. The adults, having completed their ancient mission, weaken. With their energy depleted, they glide into the depths, disappearing into the same ocean that once carried them from the river to the sea. And above them, countless new larvae begin the new journey. Predators are constant. Jellyfish, larger fish, and squid ensnare the unwary. However, the currents gradually carry them northward, toward Japan. The leptocephali begin their metamorphosis into glass eels as they approach the continental shelves. Their bodies lengthen, they develop pigmentation, and their fins become more pointed. Upon entering estuaries, glass eels face their first real test. They migrate from the open ocean to brackish waters, adapting to the new salinity and navigating obstacles such as dams, fishing nets, and predators. Small freshwater fish try to eat them. Birds perch on the banks, talons at the ready. However, instinct and agility lead them upstream. Once in freshwater rivers, they develop into yellow eels, maturing over several years. Hidden under rocks, burrowing in the sediment, they feed on crustaceans, worms, and small fish. Their growth is slow, predation is constant. Herons, otters, and humans pose risks. But eels thrive in the complex riverine environment. Juveniles follow inherited migratory routes guided by magnetic fields, water temperature, and chemical signals. Adults preparing for reproduction stop feeding, drawing on accumulated fat reserves. Maturation triggers physiological changes. The eyes widen to get a view of the ocean depths. The gonads swell. The skin adapts to the open ocean environment. Migration is both solitary and collective. Adults rarely interact with others outside of spawning areas. The life of the Japanese eel is an extraordinary journey. Miles away, the morning sun rises over the European plains, casting golden light upon fields of wheat and pastures dotted with ponds. A white stork, Ciconia ciconia, spreads its long, elegant wings, its feathers billowing in the fresh air. It rises from its nest on a chimney, legs dangling, taking advantage of the first thermals of the day. Its wings streak across the sky, their tips curling in the gusts. It glides effortlessly across the mosaic landscape. Below, meadows and marshes teem with life. Frogs hop, insects buzz, and rodents scurry. Dark, sharp eyes scan the ground, searching for movement. A subtle tremor in the grass. A reflection in shallow water. With a loud tap of its enormous beak, the stork signals to a nearby pair. The communication is audible from tens of meters away. Thermal currents lift the bird with its wings outstretched and feathers slightly arched, allowing it to conserve energy while covering long distances. Occasionally, the stork tilts, adjusting its flight path to fly over rich feeding grounds. Small fish and amphibians shimmer in the pond water. The worms come to the surface after the morning dew. With a slow, graceful descent, the stork strikes, snapping its beak shut with precision. It swallows its prey swiftly. Young storks practice close, tentative hops on thermals, flapping their wings uncertainly before taking advantage of the rising currents. The adults fly in circles above our heads, observing. From time to time, we applaud with banknotes to strengthen social bonds and encourage the youngsters. Young birds learn not only hunting skills, but also flight rhythm, thermal currents, and energy conservation. As the summer heat intensifies, adults and young birds prepare for a journey of thousands of kilometers to sub-Saharan Africa. The legs are carefully arranged beneath elongated bodies, soft feathers for aerodynamic efficiency. The eyes scan the horizon. Thermal currents over land provide lift, but seas and deserts require alternative strategies. Birds congregate and form loose flocks. Clapping indicates coordination, and occasional vocalizations establish distance, preventing mid-air collisions. The flight is relentless. The days blur as storks travel hundreds of kilometers, sometimes gliding for hours without flapping their wings. They ride rising columns of warm air, sometimes diving to forage or rest, then rising again. Predatory birds of prey circle on distant thermals. However, the white storks maintain the formation. Resting spots offer opportunities to feed and regain strength. The shallow wetlands teem with frogs, insects, and small fish. Storks wade gracefully, their long legs penetrating the water, stretching their necks and snapping their beaks shut with lightning precision. Bill's applause marks the social interaction, strengthening herd cohesion, signaling an alert, marking territorial space in temporary shelters. Young storks imitate adults, learning hunting techniques and perfecting their coordination. As the journey progresses, the storks face challenges. Large bodies of water, like the Mediterranean, lack thermal currents. The birds adapt by seeking out upwelling coastal currents. They stay closer to the ground whenever possible. Desert areas demand careful energy management. The midday heat increases metabolic expenditure, resulting in slower glides at higher altitudes and frequent rest stops. Navigation is guided by landmarks, solar signals, and magnetic orientation. The flight to Africa can take several weeks, depending on the weather and wind. Storms test resilience. The birds move on gusts of wind, flexing their wings against the turbulent air. The young cling to the adults, learning the efficiency of the routes, energy management, and the subtle timing of departure and arrival. These lessons are crucial for survival and ensure the continuation of the species. Occasionally, predators harass stragglers, but the dynamics of the flock and vigilance provide protection. Even small miscalculations can be fatal. Upon reaching their wintering grounds, the storks disperse across sub-Saharan wetlands, savannas, and river plains. With their energy reserves replenished, they feed constantly. The applause of the audience echoes through the communal dormitories, strengthening social bonds. Adults maintain their territories, young people continue learning about local landscapes, and the life cycle continues until spring, when they resume their journey north. When the time comes, the storks take flight, guided by instinct, traveling hundreds of kilometers back to Europe. Their arrival coincides with the breeding seasons. Nesting begins with a reunion ritual. Pairs that mated the previous year usually return to the same nest, landing with a clattering of beaks that sounds like wooden castanets on the rooftops and in the treetops. If the mate has not yet arrived, the first stork fiercely defends the nest, lifting wings, clicking his beak, chasing away intruders. When both partners are present, they begin to repair the enormous structure of sticks, reeds, and grass, weaving new material until the platform can safely support the weight of the eggs, chicks, and the constant landings and departures of two large birds. Some nests become great monuments over the years. They measure over a meter wide and weigh more than 100 kilograms. The male stands upright, neck outstretched and wings slightly spread, while his beak echoes rhythmically. The female responds with softer, shorter noises, tilting her head in acceptance. Their pairing is not purely instinctive, but is reinforced by memory. Many white storks mate for life or reunite with the same partner year after year. Once the eggs are laid, usually 3 to 5, chalky white and warm under the parents' feathers, both adults share incubation duties. They alternate between warming the eggs and going out to look for food. The incubating parent remains hyper-aware, gently adjusting the eggs to ensure even warmth, protecting the clutch from the midday sun and sudden wind or rain. When the chicks hatch, after approximately 33 days, they emerge blind and helpless. Food is a relentless cycle. The adults return with their beaks full of insects, frogs, small mammals, or worms, regurgitating the food directly onto the nest floor. The chicks hurry toward the food, though at first their movements are small, hesitant, and clumsy. The growth is surprisingly rapid. In a few weeks, the chicks transform into juvenile birds. They develop flight feathers, stronger legs, and an appetite that requires constant feeding. Both parents work tirelessly, gliding over fields and wetlands, hunting with pinpoint accuracy before returning to the nest with another offering. Soon the nest becomes a training platform. Stork chicks begin by stretching their wings, flapping furiously to build muscle, feeling the force of the wind. The parents encourage these early attempts simply by reducing direct feeding, thus prompting the chicks toward independence. Predators lurk below. Foxes, martens, and birds of prey pose a threat to unattended nests. Adults must remain vigilant, often standing guard at the edge with a watchful eye, observing every movement in the landscape. By late summer, the juveniles reach a size almost indistinguishable from the adults. Their plumage remains subtly duller and their beaks darker. Their instincts are heightened by observing their parents' flight patterns and foraging techniques. As migration season approaches, the chicks feel the same irresistible attraction that all storks in Europe and Western Asia experience. They jump into the sky with the adults. As the season progresses, the flocks move rhythmically across the horizon, their silhouettes etched against the sunrise and sunset. Thermals rise, wings slice through the air, and the clapping of beaks echoes through the valleys. Prey availability, weather, and energy reserves determine survival. As night falls over the wetlands of sub-Saharan Africa, storks settle into communal shelters. Their feathers ruffle in the fresh air, their wings fold gracefully, and the soft clapping of their beaks echoes faintly on the water. They conserve energy, remain vigilant, and instinct prepares them for the next day's journey. In a few months, they will ascend again, propelled northward by the thermal currents. And so on, the cycle continues. Such is the story of these amazing migratory creatures across oceans, deserts, forests, and polar skies. These migrations form the pulse of the planet, from the tiniest larvae drifting aimlessly to the heaviest seals crossing entire ocean basins. Each traveler journeys along routes marked by millennia of survival, guided by magnetic fields, star charts, weather patterns, and instinct. Predators, storms, exhaustion, and changing landscapes claim many lives, but the journeys continue, generation after generation. Nutrients are transported upstream, forests are planted, the fed coasts, troubled oceans. These migrations represent both resistance and danger, heritage and hope.